Women over 60, ignore these 5 signs and you'll end up heartbroken. Have you ever looked back at a relationship that ended badly and realized all the warning signs were there from the beginning? Have you ever wondered why you ignored your instincts, made excuses for behavior that felt wrong, or convinced yourself that red flags were just temporary obstacles that love could overcome? Welcome back to 60 Wise Living Advice. If you've ever found yourself saying, "I should have seen it coming," after a devastating heartbreak, if you want to learn how to trust those inner warning signals that could save you months or years of pain, then hit that subscribe button right now. We're building a community of women who understand that at our age, protecting our hearts isn't cynical, it's essential wisdom. The heartbreak that comes after 60 hits differently than when we were younger. We don't have decades to recover, rebuild, and start over. We don't have endless energy to heal from relationships with men who showed us exactly who they were, but we chose not to believe them. Today, I'm revealing 5 critical warning signs that, if ignored, almost guarantee heartbreak. These aren't obvious red flags that everyone talks about. These are subtle, but devastating patterns that many mature women dismiss as minor issues, only to discover they were actually previews of much deeper problems. Maya Angelou taught us, when people show you who they are, believe them the first time. These 5 signs are exactly how emotionally unavailable or harmful men show you who they are, and ignoring them will cost you more than you can imagine. Sign number 1. He love bombs you early, then gradually withdraws. The first warning sign that will save you from devastating heartbreak is recognizing the pattern of love bombing followed by gradual withdrawal. This isn't about someone who's naturally affectionate. This is about someone who overwhelms you with excessive attention, gifts, and declarations of love unusually early, then slowly pulls back once they feel secure in your attachment. Love bombing feels intoxicating at first. He calls and texts constantly, wants to spend every free moment together, tells you you're unlike anyone he's ever met, brings you flowers just because, and talks about your future together within weeks of meeting. It feels like a fairy tale romance, like you finally found someone who recognizes your worth immediately. But here's the devastating truth. Love bombing isn't love. It's a strategy. Men who love bomb are creating intense emotional dependency quickly so they can control the relationship dynamic later. Once they feel confident that you're emotionally invested, they begin the withdrawal. Fewer calls, less enthusiastic texts, canceled plans, and a gradual cooling of the intense attention that hooked you in the first place. Margaret, 67, experienced this whiplash pattern. In our first month together, Thomas was everything I'd dreamed of. He'd call me 3 times a day, surprise me with flowers, tell me I was the woman he'd been searching for his whole life. He said he'd never felt this way about anyone and wanted to spend every moment with me. I felt like the luckiest woman alive. The change was gradual but unmistakable. Around month 2, the calls became less frequent. He'd go from texting me throughout the day to sending brief responses hours later. The flowers stopped, the romantic declarations faded, and suddenly, I was the one initiating most of our contact. When I mentioned the change, he'd say he was just getting comfortable, that the intensity wasn't sustainable. I found myself desperately trying to recreate those early magical moments. What makes this pattern so damaging is that it creates an addiction to intermittent reinforcement. You keep hoping to get back to those early days when his attention was constant and overwhelming. You blame yourself for the withdrawal, wondering what you did wrong or how you can earn back his initial enthusiasm. But love bombing followed by withdrawal is always intentional. It's designed to keep you off balance, constantly working for approval, grateful for crumbs of the attention that was once freely given. Healthy love grows gradually and remains consistent. It doesn't create artificial highs followed by devastating lows. Sign number 2. He keeps you separate from his real life. The second warning sign that predicts heartbreak is when someone consistently keeps you separate from the important parts of their life. Their family, their close friends, their home, their routine activities. This isn't about taking time to introduce new relationships. This is about someone who actively maintains barriers between you and their authentic daily existence. This separation shows up in various ways. You've been dating for months, but haven't met any of his children or close friends. He's never invited you to his home or gives excuses when you suggest it. He doesn't include you in regular activities like family gatherings or established social events. Or he seems to live two separate lives, one with you and one with everyone else who matters to him. At our age, integration into each other's lives should happen naturally as relationships deepen. When someone keeps you compartmentalized, they're telling you something crucial. You're not important enough to be woven into their real life, or there are aspects of their life they don't want you to discover. Linda, 64, ignored this sign for nearly a year. Richard and I had been seeing each other regularly for 10 months, but I'd never been to his house, never met his adult children who lived nearby, never been included in any gatherings with his friends. He always had reasonable explanations. His house was being renovated, his kids were busy with their own lives, his friend group was complicated because of his divorce. The wake-up call came unexpectedly. I ran into his neighbor at the grocery store, and she mentioned how nice it was that Richard had found someone new. When I asked what she meant, she told me about the woman who'd been staying over regularly for the past few months. A different woman entirely. I realized I wasn't being kept separate from his life to protect me. I was being kept separate so he could live multiple lives with different women. Even when the reasons aren't as extreme as Linda's situation, compartmentalization is always a warning sign. It suggests someone who either isn't serious about your future together or has something to hide. People who genuinely care about you want to integrate you into their world, not keep you isolated from it. When someone consistently keeps you separate from their real life, they're showing you that you're an addition to their existence, not an integral part of it. They're maintaining the option to remove you easily without disrupting their authentic relationships and routines. Have you ever experienced being kept separate from someone's real life? Share in the comments how long it took you to recognize this pattern. Your experiences help other women understand they're not alone in missing these warning signs. Sign number 3. He dismisses your concerns as overthinking. The third warning sign that guarantees future heartbreak is when someone consistently dismisses your legitimate concerns by labeling them as overthinking, being too sensitive, or creating drama. This isn't about occasional misunderstandings. This is about someone who systematically invalidates your emotional intelligence and intuition. This dismissal happens when you bring up patterns you've noticed, express discomfort about his behavior, ask for clarification about confusing situations, or share feelings about things that bother you. Instead of addressing your concerns directly, he makes the problem about your perception, suggesting you're imagining issues that don't exist or reacting too strongly to normal situations. What makes this particularly dangerous is that it gradually erodes your trust in your own judgment. Over time, you stop bringing up concerns because you've learned they'll be dismissed. You start second-guessing your instincts, wondering if you really are being too demanding or seeing problems where none exist. Patricia, 68, fell into this trap with devastating consequences.
Whenever I'd mentioned that something felt off, like why he was always too busy to see me on weekends, or why he'd become distant after intimate moments, or why his stories about his past didn't quite add up, he'd smile condescendingly and say I was overthinking things. He'd tell me I was creating problems where none existed, that I was being too analytical about a relationship that should just flow naturally. The impact was profound. I started doubting everything I felt. When something seemed wrong, instead of trusting my instincts, I'd convince myself I was being paranoid. I stopped asking questions because I didn't want to seem needy or dramatic. I was so focused on not being too much that I ignored clear signs that he was lying about important things. The devastating truth Patricia discovered: my overthinking had been completely accurate. He was seeing other women. He was lying about his living situation, and he was using my money for expenses he claimed were temporary emergencies. Every concern I'd brought up and been told to ignore was actually a piece of a much larger pattern of deception. At our age, we've developed sophisticated emotional intelligence through decades of experience. When something feels wrong, it usually is. Someone who consistently dismisses your concerns isn't protecting the relationship from unnecessary drama. They're protecting themselves from accountability for behavior they know is problematic. Your instincts are data, not drama. Someone who truly cares about you takes your concerns seriously, even when they disagree with your interpretation. They work to understand your perspective and address your feelings, not dismiss them as character flaws.
Sign number 4. He has a pattern of dramatic relationship endings. The fourth warning sign is when someone has a history of relationships that ended in dramatic, explosive ways where every ex-partner is painted as crazy, vindictive, or unstable. While one difficult breakup might be circumstantial, a pattern of dramatic endings reveals someone who creates chaos in relationships or attracts it through their own behavior. Pay attention to how he talks about past relationships, especially recent ones. Does every story cast him as the victim of unreasonable women? Are all his ex-wives or girlfriends described as mentally unstable, overly emotional, or vindictive? Does he have no amicable relationships with any former partners, even those he was with for years? This pattern is particularly telling because it shows you exactly how your relationship will end if things don't work out. The woman he's describing as crazy for wanting accountability was once the woman he was love-bombing and making promises to. The vindictive ex who won't speak to him was once receiving the same charming attention he's giving you now. Dorothy, 65, should have paid attention to this pattern. James had a story for every relationship that had ended badly. His first wife was a narcissist who turned his children against him. His second wife was mentally unstable and couldn't handle a normal relationship. His most recent girlfriend was obsessed and wouldn't let go. Every woman in his past was portrayed as the problem, while he was always the reasonable one trying to make things work. The reality became clear when their relationship ended. The moment I started asking for accountability about his lies and inconsistent behavior, I became the crazy one. When I refused to accept his excuses and demanded honest communication, I became the unreasonable one who couldn't handle a good thing. I realized that every woman he described as unstable probably just reached her limit with his manipulative behavior. When someone has a pattern of dramatic relationship endings, they're showing you their conflict resolution style and their willingness to take responsibility for relationship problems. People who consistently blame others for relationship failures rarely learn from their mistakes or work to improve their own behavior. The right person for you will have learned from past relationships, even difficult ones. They'll take responsibility for their part in what went wrong and speak respectfully about former partners, even when relationships didn't work out. Looking back,
have you ever dated someone who had nothing but bad things to say about all their exes? Comment below about what happened when you ignored this warning sign. Your story might save another woman from making the same mistake.
Sign number 5. He uses future plans to control present behavior. The 5th and most manipulative warning sign is when someone uses promises about your future together to control or manipulate your current behavior. This isn't about genuine planning. This is about dangling the possibility of commitment to get you to accept less than you deserve in the present moment. This manipulation sounds like, once things settle down, we'll move in together. But things never settle down. After my divorce is final, we can be more public, but the timeline keeps shifting. When I retire next year, we'll travel together, but retirement plans remain vague, or I want to make sure you're the one before we get serious, but the evaluation period never ends. These future promises serve a specific purpose. They keep you hoping and waiting while accepting a relationship that doesn't meet your current needs. You endure being kept secret, accept minimal time and attention, or tolerate being treated as an option because you believe it's temporary, that someday soon things will change. Helen, 66, spent 2 years waiting for someday. Robert constantly talked about our future together, how we'd travel when he retired, how he wanted to introduce me to his family once his divorce drama settled down, how we'd spend more time together once his work project ended. These promises kept me hopeful during all the times I felt neglected or unimportant in his present life. The devastating pattern became clear. Every deadline would pass with a new excuse and a new future promise. When his retirement came, suddenly he needed more time to adjust to his new lifestyle. When his divorce was final, there were new complications with his family. When his work project ended, there was always another crisis that required his attention. I was living on a diet of maybe some days while starving for actual presence and priority in his real life. Helen's awakening was painful but necessary. I finally understood that he was using future promises to avoid present accountability. As long as I believed our real relationship would begin someday, I'd continue accepting scraps of attention and affection now. He never intended to follow through on those promises. They were just tools to keep me waiting indefinitely. Future promises without present action are manipulation, not love. Someone who genuinely wants to build a future with you works towards it consistently in the present. They don't ask you to accept being treated poorly now for the possibility of being treated well later. These 5 warning signs aren't just red flags. They're predictions of the heartbreak that's coming if you ignore them. Each one represents a fundamental character flaw or manipulative pattern that will only get worse over time, not better. The tragic truth is that most of us recognize these signs when we look back after the relationship is ended and our hearts are broken. We see the love bombing, the compartmentalization, the dismissal of our concerns, the pattern of dramatic endings, and the empty future promises. And we wonder how we could have been so blind. But you're not blind. You're hopeful, compassionate, and willing to give people the benefit of the doubt. These are beautiful qualities that make you vulnerable to people who exploit kindness and mistake patience for permission to treat you poorly. At our age, we don't have time to learn these lessons through repeated heartbreak. We don't have years to waste hoping that manipulative people will change or that love will be enough to transform someone's character. We need to recognize these patterns early and protect ourselves accordingly. If this video helped you identify warning signs you might have been ignoring, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more content about protecting their heart while remaining open to genuine love. Share this with other women who need to understand that trusting their instincts isn't cynical, it's survival. Remember, your heart is too precious to waste on people who show you through these signs that they don't deserve access to it.
When someone shows you who they are through these behaviors, believe them immediately and choose yourself instead. The right love for you won't require you to ignore warning signs, dismiss your concerns, or wait for someday. It will show up consistently, honestly, and with respect for both your heart and your intelligence from the very beginning. I'll see you in our next video, where we'll talk about how to heal your ability to trust after you've experienced these patterns, and how to recognize when someone is genuinely worthy of your beautiful heart.